Hello, I'm Ingrid Willinge and welcome to Media Week. It's been a huge few days for the media and we've got lots coming up for you in today's show, including the AFL inking the biggest Australian sports deal in broadcast history, signing a $2.5 billion agreement with Foxtel 7 and Telstra. Plus, earnings season for the media continues as Seven West announces a close to $2 billion full-year loss. And APN News and Media numbers disappoint as well. We'll bring you more on that throughout the program. But first, the Huffington Post Australia launched this week after Fairfax Media was granted the rights to partner with it under the guidance of Chief Executive Chris Jans and editor Tori Maguire. Chris has a raft of experience at launching international digital brands into Australia after founding Allure Media, which he eventually sold to Fairfax. So Chris Jans joins us now to talk about the launch and growth going forward. In the studio as well, of course, is our co-host James Manning, editor and publisher of Mediaweek. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So you launched a day early this week, of course. What's been the reaction to the launch so far?
I think it's been sensational. We always expected that we'd be able to surprise and delight people, but to have such a strong first day lineup of 4 big splashes was really exciting. And commercially, the support's been great too.
Was there any concern that you're sort of almost last of the big international brands into the market? Maybe there's an upside to that too, but, Daily Mail's here, The Guardian's here, BuzzFeed is here. They've already, started digging out their Aussie audiences and you're sort of late to the party.
I think there's a massive benefit in that because not only are we able to learn from the experience of other international brands coming to Australia, we're also able to learn from the experience of HuffPost elsewhere around the world. We're the 15th international edition, the 5th in English, and to be able to look back on how we've done in other countries, what's worked, what hasn't gone so well, has been a huge benefit for us.
Was there something behind putting video content out as well as your first sort of exclusive with Julie Bishop? Was that a strategic decision?
Absolutely. We think video should be an integral part of the experience, not something sitting out on the side, but is something that is part of the day-to-day newsroom. And for us, when a journalist is pitching a story, they're not just pitching to our news editors, they're pitching to our video editors.
Had they looked at coming into the Australian market before the HuffPost, and why did they leave it this long, do you think?
So 4 years ago, HuffPost started going international. Canada was first, then the UK, and then throughout Western Europe. And I think so I've been told, the initial blueprint always had Australia on the list. But it was a case of when the right partner was found, when the right team was found, flicking the switch at the right time, rather than just rushing into the market. So
is it somewhat a no-brainer that it would work here, just given the element of localisation? And is it tough to sort of damage a strong brand like the HuffPost?
Yeah. Could you get it wrong?
Yeah.
I hope not. Anything's possible. But I think we do benefit from the fact that Australians are interested in what's happening in the US, the UK, the rest of the world, and we have such a strong global network. So having access to that network has been a huge advantage. But also we build out a really strong local editorial team led by Tori and our editor-at-large, Lisa Wilkinson, and people like Karen Barlow, our politics editor, Lee Campbell in lifestyle. They're really talented people, and I think you can, I can sit back, relax. It's only day 3 from us, quite happily leave the office because you know that the brand's in very safe hands.
Has there been a need yet, and have you had time to research the market or your existing readers, I guess, who were there reading the US edition before you came, or potential new ones here?
Yeah, so we know what the existing audience is reading, and there are between 1 and 1.5 million Australians already reading the Huffington Post.
That's sort of unique numbers each month?
Yeah, that's the unique audience each month. So to be able to see what they're reading every month has been a huge benefit for us.
Are you expecting sort of the Huffington Post readers to come from other news sites, or will they just add you to their current sort of list of content?
Yeah, lots of people have asked me who our key competitors are, and I think the whole idea that there can only be a limited number of media players in a market is really old-fashioned. We're just competing for readers' time, and they may be spending time on doing their shopping online. They may be spending their time on other news sites. We need to give them a unique reason to come to us to get content that they're not getting everywhere else.
And compared to the Huffington Post overseas as well, do you expect Australian readers to be after different content to what global readers are after on theirs in particular, when you look at sort of, I guess, subject topics like politics or what have you?
So we have a bit of a blend between both hard-hitting news but also content that inspires people, empowers them to live a better life, and entertaining content. And that mix is core to the Huffington Post globally. I think when you look at particular political stories, obviously Australians are going to be more interested in local politics, but the US federal election coming up is going to be of amazing interest to Australians and always has been on other news sites here.
So you mean you had some big Julie Bishop, Bill Shorten were two of the big interviews on the first 2 days, but you were talking, you also had some frivolous stuff. What was the Arnott's biscuit story? That was...
What biscuit are you?
What biscuit are you, yeah. Okay.
Which for me, the high and the low, if you look at someone's Facebook feed, not everyone's Facebook feed is 100% serious, not everyone's 100% frivolous. People like a mix of the high and the low, and we want to be the natural home to both. I think it's really, really important. So we want to give people the fun throwaway stories that they want to share with their friends alongside the hard-hitting political interviews and alongside content that gives them a tool to live a better life. I think that unique blend is very HuffPost and common to us around the world.
And you're able to comment on sort of the amount of dollars the Australian investment into you this year?
Not yet, but it's been a significant investment, obviously. We are very much a startup at the same time. So we run lean, mean, hiring the right people, really smart team. We're not a bottomless pit of cash, and that's really important. We want to be profitable within the first 3 years of our operation. It's a key part of my mission, alongside being within the top 5 news sites within 3 years. But as far as the actual number, no, we're not talking about that.
It's fairly modest growth plan, because I calculated if you just double the existing audience, you sort of make that top 5 pretty much. So you've set a goal that should be achievable, I guess, if it works. Yeah?
And we want to be realistic too. There's no point setting goals that you'll never meet, because then they'll always be so far away. But I think it's very realistic that we'll be within the top 5 within a few years.
So with that in mind, what's the opportunity for advertisers? Have you sort of laid out an idea of the size of the ad revenues you're after?
We have numbers in mind, not talking about
Sharing
the numbers.
Them with us.
But there's a couple of different advertising opportunities on the site, whether it's display or video.
Yep.
Key to HuffPost globally is Partner Studio, our native offering. It accounts for 35% of revenue in the States. So it's a very different play to that exists in the Australian market now. But for me, is something I'm very keen to build up here and work with advertisers on.
And I guess if you've done different modelling on your different audiences, I guess, what's the story with mobile? Where would that be now, and where do you think it might go to?
So mobile for us now is about half of our audience. It's really key. And you think about the daily commute. Any bus or train that I get on, people are on their mobile device scrolling away. If you look globally, in some markets, 85% of our consumption is mobile. So things are only heading in one direction, and we'd want to have a really strong product in mobile. We did a redesign for our 10th birthday globally back in May, and the redesign was mobile only. It's such a cool focus for us.
And I guess mobile's all about video pretty much, is it? People like to get on there and just get into a video, and as opposed to just scrolling through all the...
And I think we want to give people a blend of different ways to consume content. But video is so core to us. Our mission globally is, within a couple of years, 50% of our content to be driven by video. So it's a really cool part of the offering.
And it's obviously a well-known brand. In the United States, it's sort of, I guess, the figurehead, Ariana Huffington's a big draw card to the United States one. What's the sort of silver bullet here? I mean, is appointing Lisa Wilkinson as editor-at-large a part of that, sort of trying to brand it that way?
I think the appointment of Lisa was really important for us, more so because she's someone that really understood our mission, that we're not just about the hard-hitting news. Hard-hitting news that informs people is really important, but she also understands that there's a room for the low, for the entertaining. There's a room to entertain people. There's room to inspire people to live better lives, to empower them to live better lives. So Lisa was someone, speaking to a lot of people in the market, Lisa was someone who right from the start understood exactly what we were trying to achieve, and that news websites today aren't just about the politics, aren't just about lifestyle and frivolous stuff. It needs to be a really natural mix.
We're only 3 days in. We won't ask you, if you set any benchmarks yet, but in their international rollouts, is there a point, whether it be 2 weeks, 2 months, that they say, okay, you get a really good idea of how you're going when you get to this point? And
so I think the first big test for us will be Nielsen numbers after we're live for a month. Okay. So when we look at the September Nielsen numbers, I think that's the first benchmark that I'm going to judge myself on, making sure that we're gaining traction. But you also don't expect to gain a massive instant uplift in audience overnight. Yep. I think there's no silver bullet that will magically make everyone switch onto your site. You need a really compelling offering every single day, and that's what we're hoping to do.
Is that existing audience you'd be easily top 20, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
at the moment? What would it?
Between 10 and 15, depending on the month. But of course, the existing product isn't geared for Australians. So by creating that package that's geared towards an Australian audience every day, we'd expect to see a lift in audience.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
we'll all be watching those numbers closely, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Chris Jan, CEO of Huffington Post Australia, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks so much.
Well, another big news out this week, I guess, has been earnings season for the media space, which is in full swing, with APN News and Media disappointing the market. Seven West Media also out this week, suffering a $1.89 billion full-year loss and cutting its dividend as well for shareholders. The group's net loss for the year to June 27 was affected by major write-downs to the value of its TV assets. Chief Executive Tim Warner says the board did what it needed to do.
I think in line with what we've seen in terms of the market operating conditions, it's the right thing to do. We've had new entrants come into our space. Our costs are obviously under some pressure, as we've seen in the last few weeks. And also we've got some question marks over market growth in terms of advertising. I think given the confluence of those factors, the board, quite rightly, undertook the decision to impair the assets the way they have.
Well, for more from a share market perspective, we're joined by Evan Lucas from IG. Evan, what a busy week for the media space, and that result by Seven West this week, not necessarily a good one. What did you make of it?
Yeah, no, unfortunately it wasn't. The market, though, wasn't that unresponsive to it. They actually sort of saw them bouncing off, unfortunately, 52-week lows. You already just heard there what Tim Warner had to say. The major sort of issue at the moment with regards to Seven West is actually clearly their paper area. We did see a fairly reasonable decline in those numbers, and that was the real concern. Paper was down 10.3%, magazines down about 7.3%, something we already knew and clearly had already seen that. I think it's also a concern that if you have a look at their TV business, although they are seeing growth there in terms of actual revenue numbers, they saw a 3.4% decline in ad dollars coming in and expect to see around about 5 to 10% decline this financial year with regards to the whole group. So there's a bit of work to be done at Seven. They were, as I said, at a 52-week low. Have seen a little bit of a rise since the result, but it certainly wasn't what you'd call stellar, and it's still a long way away from what it probably was in its glory days a couple of years back.
And then also APN News and Media, of course, out with the results. And Kieran Davis's first day on the job, not a great reaction from the share price, that's for sure.
No, horrible. And look, it's hard for him to sort of get off the mark with where he's at. A 69% decline, half on half. This is the half-year numbers that you've seen out of APN. That was pretty terrible. A lot of it's down to New Zealand. New Zealand had a fairly terrible set of numbers. They declined between 5 and as much as 10%, apologies, across their board. Also, again, the paper side of their business, like everywhere, look at News Corp, look at Seven, as I just talked to you, are seeing some pretty big declines. Their radio network, ARN, was doing okay. It certainly wasn't the kind of growth numbers, though, that the market was expecting, considering the kind of talent they pulled across in FY15. Obviously, Kyle and Jackie O was a big belief that you were going to see a really good turnaround in APM. Hasn't come to fruition completely, and that's maybe why it was such a disappointment. Initial reaction was overdone. It fell 24.5%. It is still down, though, for the week. It's down around about 11% on the back of those results, and looks like the second half of this calendar year is also looking pretty flat. They haven't started well with the guidance they gave out as well on the numbers.
Still got 9 to report. We'll talk them next week, though. Evan Lucas, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
From IG there, and we'll talk Seven West a little later in the show, James. But APN News and Media, Kieran Davis, has he got a tough job ahead of him?
Yeah, he has, but he's got a good track record, so I'm a bit of a fan of his. I mean, he's done a pretty good job at ARN. Interesting what they were talking then about if they've been able to monetise, I guess, some of the investments he made there. A little bit disappointing on some of those numbers, but yeah, no, I think it's they're doing some interesting stuff. Look, they've got a challenge in their print businesses, but they're sort of addressing that. They made a few announcements today, so feeling positive.
All right, there you have it. Coming up on Media Week, we have to take a quick break, but coming up, details around the biggest Australian sports deal in broadcast history and why it beat out the NRL. That's next.